Hey everyone, it's a new weekend, that means a new project, and today I am going to be servicing the 2003 Toyota Sequoia. So for steps, we're going to get her up on these ramps here. Okay, we got her up on the ramps. Okay, so we're going to take the oil out, which is in the oil pan back here. Got my drain pan ready right there, and we're going to take the skid plate off. There should be bolt there, bolt over on the other side there. And there's supposed to be 3 in the front, but I noticed one of mine's missing after it came back from the shop. We just had a bunch of power steering work done because it was leaking. That's what all this bright and shiny is. Had a new rack and pinion and these axles put in, and a new pump and hoses. There's the skid plate removed. Now we could do this without removing the skid plate because the oil filter is just right here, that white thing you can see down there. But with the skid plate there, you pull that oil filter off, it makes a giant mess dropping oil into the skid plate, so I don't like to do that. And once you get this loose, do the rest by hand. It's going to be really easy to turn. Make sure your pan's ready, make sure that little guy right there is popped up so the air can flow out, make sure your cap's off. And you can kind of, when you get to the last thread, you can kind of hold it up there and block the oil from flowing out. And then in a really quick movement, as you saw, you can just pull the bolt. Then your fingers don't get all dirty. And this bolt is meant to have a seal, which died, so last time I had it without it, which is why we're a little dirty up there. But I went and got some more seals, so I'll be putting a new one on. Just got those off Amazon. So sit here and wait for the oil to drain. You can decide how much you take out if you want. Once it's down to just a drip, that's probably pretty good enough. And I got my oil plug ready there with a new seal on it. If you can see that. There we go. There's your oil plug back in. Don't use power tools on this. You can't over tighten it and strip the threads out. I like to keep the outside nice and clean so I can see if there's any leaks. You can see my seal in there. It is collapsible, so you can crush it, but I just have it really nice and snug. The manufacturer specs is 94 foot-pounds if you have something that you can use to get your foot-pounds on there, but honestly for the last like 8 years I've just made it good and tight. Next we're going to move over to the oil filter. Now this should be able to take it off by hand. You can see it is spinning. It's just okay, so it's getting a little loose. Make sure our pan is positioned right. Here it comes. And again, you kind of fiddle till we get to the last thread. Kind of hold it there, and this time we're going to keep it tipped up. Until we get down here. Sometimes your oil pan has a spot where you can tip it upside down and it'll hold it. Let the oil drain out. Then we wait till this to drain. It doesn't take very long, and I usually take a rag and clean all that up too. You can see it even make a mess on the frame there, but it's way worse if the skid pan is here, or skid plate. I don't do anything too fancy, just oil from Walmart, oil filter from Walmart. It uses 5-weight-30. And I like to add a quart of this. Don't have to, it's up to you, but it's good business. And when you're preparing your oil filter, your new one, this rubber ring right here, it can buckle if it's dry. So what you do is you take your oil and you get just a little bit on your finger and you just wet that seal all the way around. Some people like to pour oil in here too. I never have. Okay, now this has stopped dripping for the most part. Oil filter's ready. And I usually take a rag and just clean that up just as good as I can. Scrub it a little. wipe that bar off wherever it traveled to. And then take your oil filter and you just spin her on. And you don't go too tight, you just get it snug and then go like another quarter turn. Unless you're me, you just consult the ancestors and say that's snug. We're good. Okay, a little trick to kind of help keep not being that messy when you go to clean up. This guy's drained now, right? Take it, flip it upside down, put it right back in that box, upside down. Close it up, and then that whole thing's ready for the trash can, easy to grab without the mess. And done with the oil pan, I'd recommend taking a rag, wiping all the oil down into the hole, putting the cap on, and then just giving it a good wipe. No sense in leaving it super messy. Now this is where you fill it up. Again, if you're wondering what kind of oil you use, typically it says right on the cap. You can see 530. Set that aside. Alright, let the stabilizer get in there as much as I had patience for. Now I'm going to do the oil. Now I know that this thing takes 6.6 quarts of oil, so I'm going to dump the whole 5 quarts in before we do anything else. Now when these are clear full, kind of hard to pour. If you don't have a funnel, the top of a 2-liter pop bottle works really well. Just pop that bad boy in there. Pour your oil in. Hopefully that'll wash that stabilizer, because it'll kind of play tricks with you when you pull your dipstick out the first time. Just FYI. Once you get those 5 quarts in, take your funnel out, have a rag ready. Put your cap back on momentarily, because the next step is to start it up, because you want to get that oil filter full and other things before you check the level, and you want to have it a little more level. I have it up on these ramps, so I'm going to put the skid plate back on, start it up, back it down off the ramps, let it run for a minute, and then check the oil. Now this skid plate has these hooks to kind of help you, so you can set it on those hooks and then put your back bolts in first, and that way it kind of holds it for you, makes it easier. It's really not that big of a pain. Now you don't want to clear tighten those back ones, just get them in good so it's not going to fall down on you, because then you're going to want to position this and you may need to move it around a little to get it right where you want it with the bolt holes. And I like this middle one. Again, I'm not sure why it was missing, so I put that one in first because it kind of lines up everything. Now I had an extra one because last time I was at the pick and pull junkyard, I harvested a few extra bolts just in case. So we're going to take that one and get it arranged how we want it, about right there. Whoop. It's a little hard while I'm holding the phone here. Get that one in first. Okay, got my 3 bolts in, nice and snug. Don't over tighten them. Don't use power tools on this, because you could strip those out pretty easy. Chances are, if you have an older vehicle and it's been to some of those cheap $20 oil fill-ups, they're already stripped and you may need to work on that. And then I went ahead and tightened these ones back up too. Okay. Now the very first time you start a car after an oil change, you gotta let it run a little bit. And if you have an oil pressure gauge, then you can watch the oil pressure. That would be this guy right over here. If you don't have an oil pressure gauge, then you listen to the engine. It's going to be kind of like anxiety when it first kicks on. It's going to run a little fast. And then give it a minute or two once the oil goes where it needs to go. it'll kind of calm down a little bit. Then you're going to want to get it on more level ground, and you can check the level and get it where you want it. Now I'm about a quart low, I would assume, which is fine, and that's where I'm going to start it at. You can see I have no oil pressure at first. It's got to fill that oil filter up, and then the oil pressure is going to come up a little bit. It's this guy again. We got low and high. It's going to come up, it's going to go a little high, and you can hear the engine's kind of run a little fast. And then it's going to calm down. You got to kind of watch it. Once it steadies out, then that's where you're good to go check your oil. Now once the engine calms down and you go back in and look at your oil pressure, you'll see that it's stabilized and it's closer to the lower end, which is where it's going to stay. And now it's time to go check and add the proper amount of oil in. Alright, so this is your dipstick where you're going to check your oil. Have a nice clean rag ready. And what you're going to want to do is pull it out once and wipe it clean, nice and dry. Put it back in and then right back out again, and that's how you check it. And if you can see that, see if I can get it to focus. Hold on. Let's get my hand closer. Alright, so if you can see, I'm not quite to the first little knob there on the stick, and that's with 5 quarts. So like I said, I know it takes 6.6, so I'm good to dump a whole other quart in, or mostly. But once you start getting in between there, you don't want to dump too fast because you can overfill, and you don't want to do that. It'll hurt your seals. So, alright, so I added more, and as you can see, I'm like right in between the 2 little dots. The dots is the running range. So the bottom dot is low running range, the high top dot is your high running range, low, high. Anything in between the dots is good. Now you don't want to get clear up here because that's too much oil and that'll be too high a pressure. So you want to keep it in between the dots. That's pretty much perfect right there. I'm kind of a perfectionist. I like to get it a little bit closer. So I'm going to add just a little bit more oil. But when you get right here and you're halfway, this is where you really got to be careful because you can overfill it quick. So add just a little bit, check it. Add just a little bit, check it, until you get it exactly where you want it. Okay, so I got it right where I want it. Now see if I can show you here. So if you can see that line, that's where I've got the oil level, and that's exactly where I want it. A little tiny bit above half, not quite clear up here. That makes me happy. Okay, now the next thing you need to do is figure out when it's time to be doing your next oil change. Come in here and look at your miles. Now, the old Guinevere here has 224,534 miles on her. Now, the old school used to do an oil change every 3,000 miles or 3 months, whichever came first. This filter I put on says it'll do 10,000 miles, or I believe it's once a year, or 12 months. But I'm going to take it just a little bit lower than that because I have a habit of going a little over what I set, right? So I'm going to say 7,000 miles or 8 months. And that's what I'm going to put my note as. So that would be 231,000 miles, 534. Okay, because this is Arizona, water evaporates out of your battery. And to keep your battery lasting longer, I like to double check the water level. Now to do that, you need distilled water. And you're going to need a screwdriver, and you're going to need a rag. And you're going to need a thimble or a shot glass. Do not get the distilled water off the baby aisle because it has minerals added for taste. You don't want minerals. Minerals will build up in your battery. That'll fill up the bottom of the battery until it touches the plates, or will help the plates corrode out. Once they touch the bottom of the plates, your battery shorts out and is no good. So you don't want it to have minerals, so pay attention to that. So get a rag and get this as clean as you can, and then get another clean rag and have it ready because you don't want crap getting into your battery. Pull the cap off, and again, be really careful and wipe it, make it nice and clean. And you're going to want to look down in these holes. Now, thing to fill up with because you want to put just a little bit of water in at a time. Overfilling your battery could ruin it too, so you got to be really careful. Alright, I got a flashlight so you can see the cutout, and as you can see, the water level is like almost to the bottom there. See those plates down in there? They don't want to hit air. As soon as they get air, they start to corrode, and then that builds up at the bottom of the battery and shorts it out. But there's the water level, and we want it to be closer to the top. It's like that one's a little better, and that cell's a little better. We got 3 on this side and 3 on that side. But we're just going to work it, and I only put a little less than half of this at a time, and just go dip a little bit in there and check the level and keep looking at it. Okay, now if you can see, I got the water level almost to the top, but you want to leave a little bit of room, and that's it. That's all the further you want to go. Again, you don't want to overfill it. Now to get it off, you just take a screwdriver and just really carefully pry it up. You can go all the way around if you want to, or once you get it started good, then you can use your fingers. You need just a little bit more prying. There we go. And again, you want to take a rag and clean that up. And when you put it back, you just press it down really good to seal it again. Now, if you can see this side, all 3 are down just a little bit, getting close to that bottom. Again, if it gets all the way to the bottom and then those plates get air, or get air when the water splashes around as the car moves around, your battery will start to die. Alright, now, I don't know, my light's kind of dying, but if you can see in there, I got them about the same as the other, right up close to the top, but not quite there. Just got to give it a little room, and then you got to squish the cap back on. Now, I already cleaned the cap, and I already cleaned under there. We're just going to get it in place here, and you just press it down. You'll hear it kind of pop in place. Just double check all the way around. Now, another trick to keep these from corroding, corrosion can't grow or progress where there's oil or grease. So if you use some WD-40 or some silicone based oil, you can put that on your terminals here, and that'll keep your connection good and strong as well, and then you won't have the corrosion. Okay, battery's all good to check out. Next thing you want to do is check your air filter. Now I have a 4-year 40,000 mile air filter in here, so probably doesn't need replaced, but it might need blowed out, checked on. There's one clip on every corner here, and this is a bit of a tight connection. You gotta kind of wiggle it a little, and this one is a clip that comes out underneath, so you gotta undo that and then lift it up, and it comes really close to this edge. So you had zip tied that seal because the little clip broke off from lifting the air cover. Oh, there's my head. Alright, now I'm going to get that air filter out. Alright, so I got the air filter out. That's what it looks like. It's not too bad. What my dad used to do, and what he showed me, was you go find the sun and you hold it up, and if you can see sun through it, still a good air filter, and I can see through it. One thing I like to do though, you pull it out every time you do a service, throw it on the ground. See, I got some crap out, just bang the crap out of it. You can see if we flip the other side over, well, you can't really see them. I had some little pieces of weeds, whatever, straw, whatever that is, dead bugs, stuff in there. Bang all that out. You don't want that going into your engine. Now when you're popping this back on, hold it kind of high and out of the way. Get your air filter in there situated first. Get your seal all the way around good, and then really carefully lower this down and get it in place. Kind of rock it back and forth, get it in place how you want first, and then put all 4 clips back on. And again, they pull off and they come back on like that. Next, you want to double check your coolant levels. You can see F is for full. Make sure you keep a good amount of coolant in here, especially if you're in a hotter area. I like to also just open this up. Now, if it's been running, it could be a little hot, so I don't recommend opening this up. But if it's been sitting and it's cool, you can do it. But again, this is very, very dangerous. You could burn the crap out of yourself, hurt yourself really bad. Don't do this if you don't know what you're doing. If your engine's nice and cool, go ahead And I like to just see, I can see the top of the radiator, and I don't really see coolant. So I usually like to add a little till I can see some coolant in there, just to be sure that I got enough, and we're not going to be running low on coolant, because I've seen these in the wintertime where this bottle was full as it said it should have been, but this was low, and then the heater didn't work because it wasn't getting coolant into the heater core, which is this little guy right here. Now, it didn't take very much, only took about 1/4 of a gallon, but I like to be able to see fluid in there above the spines. Didn't fill it up or anything, just so I can, see a good finger's worth maybe above the spines. Now, very important when you're putting this back on, there's kind of a spot where it's not all the way on, but it's loose. That's so steam can get out if you're trying this. Again, never do this when it's hot. Not a good idea. Make sure your engine's good and cold. Right here is where it comes off, okay? And you push down and go. Right there is where it first stops, but that's not all the way on. You got to go a little more till it's this way, and then it's good and tight. I've done this before and not had it all the way on and sprayed stuff all over my engine, and it wasn't a good day. So make sure that's on all the way. Okay, next you're going to want to just visually inspect your brake fluid. Make sure you have some in here. You don't want to be topping this guy off, because depending on how worn your pads are, then you could be causing yourself problems. As long as you're in between the min max on the fluid, you're good. You don't need to add it unless you get below this line, okay? Or really close to this line, I would at least go half. But again, I don't recommend adding brake fluid. It's not something you should be needing to do. But just check it, because if it needs some, then, and if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, then it's time to go see a shop. Power steering fluid's over here. It's got a spot on it that says cold when the engine's cold, and see I'm at the max level, and I know it's cold because I just pulled the cover off the coolant. And we got a spot over here that says when the engine's hot. Now, I'm not 100% on level ground, so it's not going to read, but still, it just needs to be in between those two lines, which it's all the way to the top. And like I said, I just had a brand new power steering pump and all that stuff put in here, and look, as you can see, it looks new, so nothing I need to do there. Okay, final thing on your list for maintenance: do not forget to check the air in your spare tire that is under the back of the vehicle. I'm pretty sure I'm going to need to add some, because last time I checked this, according to my notes, was in February, and it's November. But let's just see. Oh, she still has 35 pounds. We're good. I'm going to leave it. We'll mark it off as we checked it. If you don't ever check this, it'll get down to like 10-15 pounds, and then you're going to need it, and you're going to go put it on, and your tire's going to be flat. So make sure you check it. Once you have your gauge out anyways, might as well check all 4 tires. It's an all-wheel drive vehicle. All 4 tires pressure should be the exact same. You can see I have 30 pounds in this one. I'm just going to make sure the other 3 have 30 pounds, and we'll be good to go. Guys, I'm not a certified mechanic. I'm just a regular dude, husband, father, and I just do this stuff that I've been shown over the years from other people. And so the viewer takes all responsibility and all liability if you decide you want to try some of the things that I show here. And again, not a mechanic, it's just what I do. But if this helped you, then thanks for being here. Hope you have a good day.